From a 1956 Cadillac with a literal built-in kitchen to an obscure Oldsmobile sedan from the 1980s with one of the weirdest steering wheels I've ever seen. In this video, we're taking a look at the 12 rarest American sedans ever built. The first car on the list is the 1956 Cadillac Maharani. The Maharani started life as a one-of-a-kind Series 60 special sedan shown during the 1956 Motorama. Cadillac had 4 special mood cars on display that year, and this one might have been the most over-the-top of the bunch. The name came from the Maharani, the wife of a Maharaja, ruler of one of India's former native states, and Cadillac built the whole thing around a Far Eastern-inspired theme. From the outside, the car wore a deep metallic maroon finish that gave it a pretty formal look. Then you open the door and realize Cadillac had no plans to keep things subtle. Inside sat maroon and gold colors, snakeskin upholstery, satin print trim, mouton fur carpeting, carved ivory ornaments, and chased silver details. If quiet luxury was the goal, somebody clearly missed the memo. Then there was the passenger side. Cadillac installed a specially styled roll-top cabinet packed with what they called touring conveniences. Sounds harmless enough until you find out what that actually meant. This car came with a folding table, a hot plate, a cutlery tray, a cooling unit, coffee and water dispensers, a flip-out table, and yes, even a recessed toaster. That's right, a toaster in a Cadillac sedan. And the funny part is, this was not for show. Cadillac actually figured out ways to make the whole thing work. The coffee and water dispensers were supplied from tanks mounted under the hood, and the cooling unit had its compressor sitting in the trunk. Also hidden inside sat a built-in combination safe, a safety deposit box, and a ladies' vanity case. The second car on the list is the 1982 Ford Probe 4. Yes, the name can get a little confusing. Probe 4 was actually the third car in the Probe series. Probe 2 never appeared, and Probe 3 ended up as a concept for Ford Europe, with some of its ideas later finding their way into the Mercury XR4 Ti. Now, if there was one thing Ford cared about here, it was airflow. The Probe 4 achieved an incredibly low drag coefficient of 0.15, a number said to match the F-16 fighter jet. Ford went to all kinds of lengths to make this happen. The body sat low to the ground to cut down airflow underneath, and the surfaces were shaped to stay as smooth as possible. Even the badges sat flush with the body so they would not interrupt airflow. Headlights hid beneath plastic covers, the side windows sat flush in their frames, and even the mirrors were carefully shaped and swept back. The car used fully skirted wheels with flexible urethane membranes stretched between the wheel covers and the body. Sounds a little strange, and honestly looks strange too, but there was a reason for it. The membranes flexed when the front wheels turned, letting the car steer normally and helping cut down turbulence around the wheel wells. Ford even gave the car specially developed skinny Goodyear tires with a low drag tread pattern. The aerodynamic tricks kept going. Instead of putting the radiator and air conditioning hardware up front, Ford moved them to the rear of the car. Air entered through vents behind the rear wheel openings, with power fans helping move it through and out the back. At higher speeds, the rear of the car could rise 6 inches while the nose dropped 4 inches, helping stability and letting the car slice through the air more cleanly. The front air dam worked with the system too, lowering automatically to control airflow underneath, though drivers could raise it for rough roads. Power came from a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine tilted 70 degrees to one side so it could fit beneath the low-sloping hood. Inside sat gray velour sling-style seats designed for lumbar and thigh support in a semi-reclining position that saved roof height. The controls surrounded the driver in black panels with white lettering, and one small detail really stood out. The top of the single-spoke steering wheel was transparent. Next up, we have the 1986 Oldsmobile Incas. Built by Ittle Design for Oldsmobile, the design took inspiration from the 1974 Ford Maya. The Incas had a layout similar to another Ital design concept called the Medusa, a compact four-seat car with a center-mounted engine. Up front, the doors opened with a moving dome setup, and in the back you got seagull wing-style rear doors. Inside, passengers got what were described as real armchairs instead of regular seats. The steering wheel was unusual, too. The Incas used a setup inspired by an aircraft cloche, borrowing ideas from aviation. Part of the thinking behind it came from Mazda marketing research suggesting younger buyers raised on video games preferred this kind of steering over a traditional wheel. The cloche only needed 90 degrees of movement each way, and a lot of functions were built right into it. On the right side sat the gear selector, air conditioning, and windshield wipers. On the left side, you had the lights, turn signals, stereo, and cruise control. Next on the list is the 1988 Chevrolet Venture. The Venture was smaller than the Caprice, larger than the Celebrity, and aimed at buyers looking for something entry-level that still gave you a little more than expected. One thing that stood out was the removable glass roof, which gave the car a much different feel than your average sedan from the late 1980s. And according to Chevrolet ads back then, the upper structure could automatically darken. I'm not exactly sure how that worked since I could not find much more information on it, but it sure sounds interesting. Chevrolet showed the Venture at the 1988 New York Auto Show. Next up, we have the 1988 Cadillac Voyage, a car that probably needs an entire video by itself. From the bottom of the windshield all the way to the tail lamps, the upper part of the car was made from one continuous piece of tinted glass. It had no outside door handles, matching front and rear fender skirts, and movable front wheel skirts that shifted outward when the car turned sharply. Getting inside sounded pretty high-tech too. No key was needed. Drivers entered a code, the doors opened, the front windows dropped slightly, and the seat and the steering column moved out of the way to make getting in easier. Once inside, the car could remember driver settings, adjust the mirrors automatically, heat the seats on cold mornings, and give passengers a massage during longer drives. Cadillac even included a navigation system that could show your location and route on a color screen. This sedan was described as a rolling laboratory for future Cadillac ideas, and to be honest, Cadillac seemed pretty determined to squeeze every idea they could think of into one car. The next car on the list is the 1990 Mercury Cyclone, not to be confused with the Mercury Cyclone from the 1960s. The car appeared at the 1990 Chicago Auto Show, and Mercury clearly was not going for an ordinary look here. In fact, it even got rid of traditional side mirrors. Instead, tiny cameras near the front wheel area showed what was behind the car on a screen inside the cabin. The idea was to keep the body smooth without mirrors sticking out and interrupting the shape. The Cyclone used a thin fiber optic headlight system meant to improve visibility at night, which sounds pretty advanced for the early 1990s. Mercury never confirmed exactly what engine sat in the car, though it seems a V8 was part of the plan. Up next, we have the 1991 Pontiac Protosport 4. The company built this sedan around a pretty simple idea, give you the comfort of a four-passenger car, but the kind of performance and handling people usually expected from a sports car. The Protosport 4 was the fourth generation in Pontiac's line of high-tech concept vehicles, and the company had its sights set on building affordable sports cars. One of the more unusual things about the car was the door setup. It used 4 clamshell doors, giving it a pretty different look from a normal sedan. Power came from a dual overhead cam V8 paired with a 4-speed automatic transmission that sent power to the rear wheels, and the car used 4-wheel steering. Pontiac gave it some pretty serious wheel sizes too, with 19-inch wheels up front and larger 20-inch wheels in the rear. At number 8, we have the 1992 General Motors Ultralite. The goal with this sedan was pretty simple: save fuel. The Ultralite used a carbon fiber body and structure to keep weight down, and thanks to lightweight materials throughout, the whole car weighed only around 1,400 pounds. Power came from a rear-mounted 1.5-liter three-cylinder two-stroke engine making 111 horsepower. General Motors claimed the car could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.8 seconds, reach a top speed of 135 miles per hour, and return around 80 miles per gallon in EPA highway testing. The company even claimed it could hit 100 miles per gallon cruising at a steady 50 miles per hour. The design was not exactly normal either. The doors lifted upward in a gull-wing style for access to both rows of seats, and the large glass area was meant to give the driver strong visibility all around. General Motors gave it fiber optic headlights, LED taillights, and fluorescent tube lighting. Not surprisingly, with a look like this, the Ultralite eventually ended up in the 1993 movie Demolition Man. The next car on the list is the 1992 Oldsmobile Anthem. You can pretty clearly see some of the styling that later made its way into the 1995 Oldsmobile Aurora, at least from the outside. So in that sense, it does not feel all that unfamiliar, though it is still not exactly a car many people know about. Things got a little more interesting in the cabin. The Anthem had a sweeping dashboard and a screen mounted between the front seats that could pivot around and show navigation and other visual information. It also came with a heads-up display and a driver information system with navigation. Passengers could adjust the glass roof panels too, changing them from clear to nearly opaque depending on how much light they wanted. Looking at it now, it kind of makes you wonder if things might have gone differently had Oldsmobile put something closer to this into production instead of the 1995 Oldsmobile Aurora. At number 10, we have the 1996 Lincoln Sentinel. First of all, let's talk about the size, because this was a seriously large car. At 218 inches long, it was only 1 inch shorter than a 1996 town car, just for reference. As for the design, you could spot the older Lincoln inspiration pretty quickly. The shape and center opening doors came from the 1961 Continental. The grille took inspiration from the 1940 Continental, and even the exhaust outlets built into the rear bumper were a little callback to the 1955 Continental. Adding to the luxury side of things, the Sentinel rode on a lengthened Jaguar platform. At number 11, we have the 1996 Chrysler LHX. Chrysler called this one a classic for tomorrow, and that pretty much sums it up. It mixed older car design with a more modern approach. As for the interior, Chrysler did not go overboard with crazy gimmicks. Instead, they kept things simple and focused on a more classic luxury feel. And if you were wondering what was under the hood, the LHX used a 3.5-liter V6 engine making 250 horsepower. The final car on the list is the 1996 Ford Synergy 2010. This was Ford's idea back in 1996 of what a family car might look like in the year 2010. The focus here was efficiency. Ford went for an aerodynamic design aimed at around 80 miles per gallon using a small 1-liter diesel-electric hybrid setup. The whole car weighed about 1 ton. The shape was guided by what Ford called air fences, which helped control airflow and gave the car its rounded design. It had computer-animated instruments and even voice control, where you could call up things like the phone book just by speaking to the system. This was part of Ford's work under the Partnership for a New Generation of Vehicles, where the big manufacturers were basically researching more efficient future car designs. Making videos like this is tricky because there are just so many cars to choose from. That is why I usually try to focus on really rare cars, mainly obscure concept cars that were actually built, basically cars that did not just exist on paper. So if there is one you think should have made the list or one you want to see in a future video, feel free to leave a comment. The information in this video was gathered from the sources shown on screen. As always, you can find the sources in the Google Doc linked in the description. I recommend checking them out for more details. If you enjoyed this video, there are a couple more on screen you might like. One takes a look at the Ford Fiesta Touareg, a really cool hatchback from the 1970s. The other tells the story of the Studebaker Avanti XUV, a project that ended with an arrest. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.